Matthew didn't even recognize the sound of her voice. Not at first. It was soft, distant, like a stranger calling his name through a thick fog. When he stepped through the front door, suitcase still in hand, Mia was already standing there. No smile, no hug. Just those 5 words. I want a divorce, Matthew. The air in the room vanished. 3 weeks. Just 3 weeks away. A short work trip to Chicago and back. Same routine, same check-ins, same I love you texts at night, or so he thought. Mia's voice didn't shake, her hands didn't tremble. It was like she had rehearsed it, like she had already grieved what she was about to do. Matthew dropped his bag slowly on the hardwood floor. The silence between them stretched like an ocean. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. What do you even say when your whole world ends in a hallway? It wasn't always like this. Mia used to laugh so hard her eyes would water. She used to wait for him on the porch every night after work, barefoot, wine in hand, swaying to music only she could hear. And Matthew? He worshipped the ground she walked on. They met 10 years ago right there in Maine, a bookstore. Rainy day. She was reaching for a book of poetry. He was looking for a quiet place to hide from his own broken heart. They found each other, built a life, bought a home, built traditions, weekend drives along the coast, Friday movie nights, inside jokes whispered at dinner parties. So what happened? How do you go from I'll love you forever to I'm leaving you in just 3 weeks? Matthew couldn't sleep that night. The house, once warm and familiar, felt like a shell. Her scent still lingered on the pillows, but she was already gone. Not physically, she hadn't packed yet, but emotionally. She had left months ago. Maybe longer. The next morning he noticed little things, a drawer half empty, her phone screen lighting up with names he didn't recognize, her smile quieter, her eyes distant. Was he blind? Or just in denial? He started digging. Not out of anger, out of heartbreak. He searched for clues like a man who had lost something, precious, but all he found were pieces of a woman who no longer loved him. The dishwasher she always hated, fixed 2 weeks ago, not by him. The new bottle of perfume in the bathroom, one he never bought her. The password change on her laptop. Locked. Pain doesn't always scream, sometimes it whispers. And Matthew, he heard everything now. He asked her if there was someone else. She looked him dead in the eyes and didn't answer. That silence was louder than any confession. He left. The house that night. Slept in his car, parked at the old lighthouse where they first kissed. Wind howling, waves crashing, a memory tearing itself apart. 3 weeks. That's all it took for everything to fall apart. But in truth, it had been, unraveling slowly, like thread from a sweater. One missed call here, one cold glance there, until suddenly it was all gone. And now? Matthew stood in a home that no longer felt like his, a marriage that no longer existed, with a woman he no longer knew. The worst part? She didn't cry. He did. The days after the divorce request moved slowly, like wading through cold water in the dark. Matthew stayed in the house. Mia stayed too, but not as his wife. Not even as a friend, just as someone passing through, a ghost wearing the face of the woman he loved. She didn't cook anymore. She didn't talk much either. When she did, it was short, civil, empty, like a tenant giving notice before moving out. The house in Portland, Maine had once been filled with laughter. It echoed differently now, quiet, tense. You could hear the floor creak with every step. You could feel the distance between them growing with every silent meal. Matthew still tried. He made her coffee in the mornings like he always had, placed it gently on the counter. No sugar, just a splash of cream. The way she liked it. She never said thank you. Sometimes she didn't even drink it. One night he asked her if she wanted to talk. She didn't even look up. I think we're past that, Matthew. He slept on the couch that night and the next. Outside, autumn was taking over. The trees in their backyard were on fire with color, reds, golds, browns. The same trees they'd once laid under, watching clouds and dreaming up baby names. Now he couldn't even look at them without his chest tightening. He stopped checking her phone, stopped asking where she went when she left for hours. It didn't matter anymore. She had already checked out. All that was left was the paperwork. Still, he kept remembering. The day they adopted Cooper, their dog. The morning they danced barefoot in the kitchen because the coffee had spilled and the floor was slippery. The time he held her in the hospital after she lost the baby. They had been through storms and survived. Why not this? He asked her that. Why now, Mia? Why give up now? She looked at him, really looked, like it hurt to say what she had to say. Because I don't feel anything anymore. I haven't for a long time. That truth cut deeper than any lie ever could. The day Mia moved out was cold, the sky grey, the wind sharp. She packed light. Just a couple suitcases and a small box of books. Left most things behind. Furniture, wedding albums, even her favorite. Blanket. She didn't want memories, just freedom. Cooper followed her to the door, tail wagging, hopeful. She gave him one last pat and whispered something in his ear. Then she was gone. Matthew stood at the window long after the car disappeared down the street. He didn't cry that day. Not because he wasn't broken, but because there was nothing left to cry out. The next few weeks passed in a blur. He worked, ate little, drank more. He stopped shaving, stopped answering calls. His sister came by once, knocked on the door, left soup. He didn't open. The walls of the house felt like they were closing in. Familiar things began to hurt. The photos on the fridge, the dent in the wall from their New Year's champagne mishap, the scarf she'd left on the chair. He tried to throw things out, but every object had a memory. Every drawer he opened released a ghost. One night he found the old box of letters they used to write each other, back when they believed words could fix anything. He read each one by candlelight, her handwriting, her voice, in his head. I'll never leave you. You're the only place I feel safe. You and me, always. Lies now, or maybe just old truths that died. He went to the ocean that weekend. The same rocky coastline where they had shared their first kiss. He watched the tide roll in, pull away, crash back. The water was honest. It came and went, but never pretended to stay. He sat there until sunrise, and when he returned, something had shifted. He knew she wasn't coming back. Not this time. Matthew didn't tell anyone the full story. Not his sister. Not his co-workers. Not even his best friend, Alex, who had been his best man. What was he supposed to say? She stopped. Loving me. Or worse, I was too blind to see it. Instead, he lied. Little things. Said she needed time, said it was mutual. Said they were working things out. He wasn't lying to protect her. He was lying to protect himself from the shame. The shame of giving everything, and still not being. Enough. He started therapy just once a week. At first he said nothing, sat in silence as the therapist scribbled notes. But over time the words trickled out. I feel like I failed. Sometimes I hear her laugh in my head, and I'd give anything to hear it again in real life. The therapist asked, "What would you have done differently?" Matthew didn't answer, because deep down he believed he did everything right. And that's what hurt the most. One morning, Matthew found her wedding dress in the attic, still wrapped, still perfect. He stared at it for a long time, then sat down next to it and whispered, "I would have died for you." Then he shut the box and never opened it again. The house began to decay with him. Dishes piled up, windows stayed shut, dust gathered on, surfaces they once danced on. The garden they had planted together, her pride and joy, the wilted from neglect. He tried dating. Once. A woman named Claire. Kind eyes, gentle voice. But when she reached for his hand at the cafe, he flinched. Not because she'd done anything wrong, but because the last time someone held his hand like that, they let it go forever. So he paid the bill, apologized, and left before dessert. That night he sat on the floor of his living room and stared at the walls for hours. And for the first time he whispered her name out loud. Mia. He said it like a prayer, or a curse. He wasn't sure which. Months passed. The snow came early that year. Maine turned into a painting. White rooftops, icy trees, frozen. Silence. But inside Matthew's house, winter had arrived long before. He got a letter from the county office. Mia had filed for full ownership of the house. No warning, no conversation, just legal forms. Matthew stared at the paper, his name printed cleanly at the top, her signature at the bottom. It hit him harder than the divorce. This house had been their world, their dream. They painted the walls together, chose every piece of furniture, made love in every room. They fought here, they forgave here. And now she wanted it all. He called her. She didn't answer, so he drove, 10 miles outside town, to the small apartment complex where she now lived. The parking lot was quiet. Dim lights buzzed above. He waited in his car for almost an hour. Then she came out, different, shorter hair, new coat, no ring. She saw him, froze. He rolled down the window, said her name. Mia. Her face didn't change. She walked to the car slowly, her voice flat. "What are you doing here?" "I got the letter," he said. She looked away. "It's just the house, Matthew." "No," he said. "It's not." A pause. "It's everything." Mia sighed. "I need to move on. I can't heal if I'm still tied to that place." "And me?" he asked. "Do I mean nothing?" She looked at him, and for the first time she looked tired. "You were my home once, but I outgrew us." Silence. And then she walked away, didn't look back. Matthew sat there, hands gripping the wheel, heart pounding. The snow falling heavier now. It blurred the windshield like tears he refused to shed. He knew what was coming next. And still, when the court notice arrived weeks later, saying the house was no longer his, it felt like losing her all over again. He packed slowly, room by room. The photos came down. The furniture got covered. Cooper barked when the movers arrived, confused and anxious. On the final day, Matthew stood at the door, looked back one last time. "I hope you're happy, Mia," he whispered. Then he shut the door. And this time it didn't feel like home anymore. Matthew didn't move far. Just a small, one-bedroom apartment over a hardware store in town. The kind of place that smelled faintly of old wood and rain. Nothing fancy, just enough. He brought almost nothing from the house, no photos, no furniture, no shared memories, just Cooper and a single mug. The mug had a crack in the handle. Mia had given it to him years ago. It said, "You, me, and coffee forever." He didn't use it, just placed it on the windowsill like a memory too fragile to touch. The first nights in the apartment were quiet, too quiet. He missed the sound of her footsteps, the creak of the floorboards, even the arguments. At least then her voice filled the air. Now it was just Cooper's occasional bark and the ticking of the cheap wall clock. Matthew got a job at a small marine supply store near the docks. It wasn't what he had planned for his life, but it paid the bills and the routine kept his mind from spiraling too far. He worked during the day, walked Cooper in the evenings, slept in short, broken stretches, ate little, talked even less. Sometimes on his walks, he passed the old house. He never stopped, just glanced at it from the corner of his eye. One night, he saw lights on inside, shadows moving, someone else laughing, strangers living in his memories. It hit him harder than expected. That house wasn't just made of walls and paint. It was a graveyard, of love, of promises, of everything he'd fought for, and now someone else was planting flowers where he once buried dreams. He walked home in silence. Didn't sleep that night. Months passed. Seasons changed again. The pain didn't go away, but it changed shape. He stopped checking her social media, stopped imagining what she was doing, whether she had someone new, whether she still thought of him. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. It no longer mattered, but the loneliness that still lingered, it wrapped around him like fog, quiet, heavy, always there when the world went still. He tried writing, just small thoughts, scribbled in a notebook late at night. Not poetry, not letters, just moments. You don't lose someone all at once. You lose them in pieces. First the smell of their shampoo, then their toothbrush by the sink, then their voice in your memory. I'm not angry she left. I'm angry that she made me believe she never would. I still say goodnight to her. She just doesn't hear it anymore. Writing helped, a little. Not enough to heal, but enough to keep breathing. Sometimes that's all survival is. It had been almost a year, a full circle of holidays, seasons, and Sundays without her. Matthew had grown quieter, older, not in years, but in the way pain ages you, silently, from the inside. One morning, he got an invitation in the mail, a wedding, Mia's. He stared at the card for a long time. The paper was thick, elegant, formal lettering, her name now paired with someone else's. It didn't hurt the way he thought it would. It hurt worse. Not because she had moved on, but because it made their love feel like a past life, like something that never really happened. He didn't go to the wedding, didn't send a gift, didn't say a word. But that night, he walked to the beach, the one where they had first kissed, and sat there in the cold wind, knees pulled. To his chest, eyes staring at the sea. The waves didn't care, the sky didn't care, and maybe that was the point. Everything they were had vanished like footprints in wet sand, washed away, forgotten by the world. Matthew reached into his coat pocket, pulled out her last note, just a few words. "I'm sorry it ended this way. No signature, no explanation, just finality." He let it go, watched the paper lift into the wind and disappear. That was the last time he ever said her name out loud. He lost the house, lost her, lost the version of himself that once believed love could conquer anything. Some losses are quiet, some are loud. This one echoed. It didn't shatter him all at once, but piece by piece, he disappeared. Until there was just a man with a dog, walking along the coastline of a town where no one remembered the way she once smiled at him. And maybe that was the most tragic part of all. Years passed. Not in bursts, but in slow, quiet stretches. Like fog drifting across an empty harbor. Matthew aged. Not dramatically. There were no drastic transformations, just the kind of aging that happens when the heart is never quite whole again. His beard turned grey. His walk grew slower. His eyes softer but distant. He still lived above the hardware store. The same one-bedroom apartment with creaky stairs and a view of the alleyway. The mug was still on the windowsill, still cracked, still untouched. Cooper grew older too, his muzzle turned white, his steps less eager. But he stayed loyal, never leaving Matthew's side, even as the town changed around them. New buildings went up, stores changed names, faces came and went. But Matthew remained, anchored. One morning, he sat on the bench outside the marina, sipping black coffee from a paper cup. The sea was calm, the air still. A couple walked past, laughing, young, in love, her head on his shoulder, their fingers locked like puzzle pieces. Matthew didn't look away. He smiled. Not because he felt joy, but because he remembered what that once felt like. Later that week he ran into an old friend, someone who used to know both him and Mia. They chatted politely, small talk, weather, work, life. And then the friend asked, "Do you ever think of her?" Matthew didn't answer right away. He looked out toward the sea. And then, quietly, he said, "Every day, but not in the way you think." The friend nodded. Didn't press. Because some things don't need to be explained. That night, Matthew opened an old cardboard box he'd buried deep in the back of his closet. Inside were fragments, a worn photograph, the edge of a birthday card, the receipt from their honeymoon cabin in Vermont. He laid them out on the table, touched each one. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He cried. Not loudly. Not desperately. Just tears that came like rain on dry ground, quietly, steadily needed. The kind of cry that doesn't ask to be seen, only to be released. Afterward, he packed the box back up, sealed it with tape, and wrote on top, "Let it go." He didn't throw it out, just placed it high on a shelf, out of reach, out of sight, but not out of memory. The following spring, Cooper passed away in his sleep. Matthew buried him beneath an old pine tree by the beach. No marker, no ceremony. Just a quiet goodbye and a hand pressed gently to the earth. That night he walked the shoreline alone. Same path, same waves. He stopped where the water kissed the rocks, looked out at the horizon and whispered, "I don't hate you, Mia." Then, after a pause, I just wish you had stayed." And with that he turned and walked home, not healed, not whole, but standing. And sometimes that's the bravest thing a broken heart can do, because not all endings are meant to feel fair. Some are just meant to feel real. And if this story moved you or even made you think, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Like this video and share it with someone. And this story is a work of fiction. All characters, names, and situations are entirely made up and are not based on real individuals. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental.